Do we have enough to call a quorum?
We do just now have enough for a quorum, yes.
Okay.
We
Well,
have,
why don't we call the meeting to
actually,
order?
okay, I was gonna say, I think I see Mayor Snyder will be coming on here.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm filling in for Mayor Callaway, and I'm in the same situation as Mayor Lenahan, so I may have to step away and do something real quick with the contractors and be back. Thank you. Good to see everybody.
Good to see you too.
And I'm Mayor Beatty's proxy today, Ashley Hartmeyer, Prague City Councilor, and I have a work meeting, so I may be popping in and out. I might be gone shortly, so hopefully I'm here for all the votes and we'll be good.
Yeah, I thought I'd spoil myself as the guy running the meeting today. I wouldn't have a second meeting in this year at the same time I'm trying to run this meeting in this year. So right now my standing record's 3.
Indeed. And Chair Delane, if I could for just a minute, I want to check in with Councilor Ackerval. Councilor Ackerval, will you be attending for Mayor Fitzgerald, do you know? Oh, we might have lost her. Councilor Ackerval, are you going to be sitting in for the mayor?
Hi, this is Kristen, and I believe that the mayor will be attending as far as I'm aware.
Yep, okay, yep, she has joined us. Right.
Great.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, all right, I think we may be, let's see here.
Hello, I did just get everything connected here.
Great, welcome, thank you.
You know, I'm sorry to confuse this, but I would love to swap places with Councilor Ackerval because I have to be out at 1 o'clock for a period. So I think it would be better if she's our attendee. Sorry for all the trouble.
Okay.
I will listen.
All right, we can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. And let's see, one more here, if I could. Councilor Rippey, are you going to be attending for Mayor Truax?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so we've got Councilor Rippey as well. And okay, I think we might be ready to go.
Stephen, I feel out of place now. I feel like I should let Frank run the meeting today since it's mostly alternates, right? I mean, shouldn't Frank be doing this instead of me? Frank, do you want to take over unexpectedly? No? Okay. All right. Well, welcome everybody.
I'm not an alternate, and I'm here.
Okay, good. That makes a couple, 3 of us.
And I should have my camera on soon.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, so this is the Washington County Coordinating Committee meeting for Monday, March 14th. We're scheduled from noon to 2. We'll see if that if we can get out of here a couple minutes before. That'd be great. First up is visitors' comments. Stephen, did we end up with any visitors' comments?
We actually have Commissioner Roy Rogers has requested to provide some comment here at the beginning of the meeting, so he looks like he's been promoted.
Well, good to see all of you. In fact, I was just in a meeting with Frank here a minute ago and going back to that. I guess we're a little different than at ODOT. We always put people on camera, so you can't see me. I'm just, I guess, oh, there we go. Gee.
Turn your camera on, Roy. We'll see you.
No, thank you. Well, I disappeared there. Okay, I'm back.
There you are.
Thank you. I want to make a couple of real quick 3 points, and then I will get back to the other meeting. And I would first like to introduce myself. I know most of you have known me a long time, but I'm Roy Rogers, Washington County Commissioner. I serve District 3, which is the southeast quadrant of the county. My first comments are on MSTIP, the 23-28 allocation, specifically on slides 7 and 8. That's a topic that'll be on your agenda today. Our crack staff at the county has already made that presentation, but I would like you to really think about 3 things. One, it doesn't specifically call it out, but we need some parity or equity in regard to the distribution of funds between the districts, the 4 districts. So I had heard from Stephen and others that that'll happen, but I think it's important that maybe you memorialize that so that we understand that there is money that's going to be spread. That's been always the historic way of doing things. Secondly, when we look at the metrics that you'll find on page 7 and 8, there's not a lot of comment regard to major streets. And as you all recall, when MSTIP was originally drafted, approved by the public, and then subsequently rolled into the permanent levy of the county through Measure 50, major streets was the major issue. And that was supported by the cities, and that was the coalition that passed that program. And it might be nice to call it out. It's not specifically called out. The last thing I would mention quickly is that the term equitable is used, and I've said this to my board and probably here before. We all are looking for equitable treatment. What does that mean, though? I'm one of those guys who like to understand what terms mean. On Jpac, we used to use terms and found out that they evolved into something quite different over periods of time. So I would ask you to take a look at the word equitable and encourage you to do those three things: parity between districts, metrics, take a look at whether or not major streets have enough emphasis, and the word equitable, some definition of what that means, and ideally some examples. In regard to bonding, I've been before you before, and I've been before our board, and we're doing some work. And it's certainly, I would tell Stephen and Chris and others from our staff, I mean, we got the best staff in the world, and I think they're great, but they're, we all have different viewpoints sometimes. And I, again, hope that we're going to look at doing some bonding of those MSTIP projects, whatever you select. I would look at it in increments of 10, maybe 15 million or 20 million per year of our allocation. What would that buy? You all have, at least in the larger city level, you have bond council, and ask them what that would buy. That would be interesting. With inflation at about 8%, bond costs far less than that. I think it would be well to our benefit collectively to bond those projects. And lastly, in regard to the MSTIP projects, I know Stephen has mentioned, even though our staff is great, we have limited capacity sometimes to deliver things in the way that, the way we'd like to have them delivered. So, if there could be some kind of partnership between, that phone is ringing. Turn it off. There we go. There we go. If we could have some kind of cooperation in our partnership to look at how you might all assist us if we can't do it internally to get the capacity to put those projects together. I think that would be important. So those are the two big ones. The last one is just a real, I'm introducing a motion of a correction of a proclamation tomorrow regarding Ukraine, and certainly support our Ukrainian and Russian folks who are here in Washington County. I'm proud that they're here, but we need to condemn the Russian government in regard to the activity in Ukraine. It's a very sad, sad issue. And I'm going to tell you this because you might want to take a look at our resolution and utilize something similar in your cities. I think it's an important topic. So thank you, Jeff, for giving me a little bit of time, and to others, it's wonderful to see you all again. So I'll click off.
Thank you, Roy. Stephen, did we have any other visitor comments?
We didn't have anyone else that would had signed up to testify. If there was anyone else who was interested in providing a comment, you could raise your hand. I'm not seeing anyone. I think we're ready to move on.
Great. Well, and always the bonding question. I think you guys are working on that at the county, right? You're trying to get something pulled together to bring back to this group for our review and approval on bonding, right, Stephen?
Yeah, well, for discussion at least. We need to talk with our board, of course, and then we would come to the WCCC at some point in the future to have a discussion as well. Yeah.
Okay, so there's something in process there.
Yes.
Okay.
Indeed.
Great. Introductions and roll call. I think we kind of did a little of that before we get going, but we can roll back through it as you do roll call, Stephen.
We can do that. I'm just going to run through in city alphabetical order again. So for City of Banks, looks like we have Mayor Jones.
Here.
For City of Beaverton, Councilor Hartmeyer Prigg.
Here.
For Cornelius, Mayor Delane.
Yep.
City of Durham, I believe we have, yep, Mayor Sherrod.
Here.
Thank you. For Forest Grove, Councilor Rippey.
Here.
For Hillsborough, Councilor Pace.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Linehan for North Plains.
Here.
For Sherwood, Mayor Mays.
Yep.
For City of Tigard, Mayor Snyder.
Here.
Thank you. For Tualatin, Mayor Bubenik.
Present.
Thank you. For Wilsonville, we have Councilor Ackerval.
Here.
Commissioner 5 for Washington County.
Present.
Thank you. And I'm looking to see, do we have a Metro Council rep with us? We'll keep an eye out. I don't think we have one right now. We have for ODOT, we have Matt Freitag.
Here.
Thank you. And I see Tara O'Brien from TriMet as well.
Here.
Thank you. Did I miss anyone? All right. Thank you all.
And thank you for all the alternates coming in today to help cover so that we could actually have a quorum for our meeting. Thank you. Great. Okay, well, that takes us on to considerations of the Washington County meeting for February 14th, 2022. Any corrections, additions, adjustments anyone sees? Seeing none, would I entertain the motion to approve?
I move to approve as presented.
Second.
I've got the motion by Councilor Mayor Schneider. I didn't catch the second. Oh, Mayor Linehan. Okay, thank you, Mayor Linehan. Motion second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye, raise a hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Abstentions?
Abstained.
Ashley, were you abstaining?
Yeah, just I wasn't present.
Okay, thank you. So duly noted, one abstention. Thank you. Passes as moved. Great, that takes us on to annual TDT rate adjustment. So I think we have, do we have Julie? I hate to do this. Sonovsky?
Hi, yes.
Sorry for murdering your name.
No worries. I'm Julie Sosnowski. I'm a senior transportation planner at Washington County, stepping in for Erin Wardell today. I'm also the countywide TDT coordinator. And I'm here to talk about the Transportation Development Tax annual rate adjustment. The rate will be increasing 3.901% this year. It is a non-discretionary item, but the Board of Commissioners is required to take action on it. It goes into effect July 1st of this year. And we're presenting it here for your review and comment. And if you have any substantive comments, we'll share those with the board when it goes to them in mid-April. And just for information that we took this to the WCCC TAC and they did not have any substantive comments this year. So included in your packet is a memo and there's 3 attachments. The first is a new rate table. As an example, the single family rate will be changing from $9,623 to $9,998 this year. There's also a rate adjustment history included showing the 3 components of the index, which are materials, 50%, labor, 30%, and right-of-way, 20%. And we use a 5-year moving average to avoid significant fluctuations in the rate. And also included is an excerpt from the TDT code that shows the TDT index methodology. So are there any questions or comments about this?
Wow. Super quiet on that one. Okay.
Some of our traditional loudmouths aren't here.
Oh, that noted. Can we get that for the minutes? That was Mayor Snyder.
I'd say it in front of them too.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's to use the commissioner's favorite term, kind of perfunctory, right? I mean, Stephen, we do need a motion and a approval on this one, or is it simply for presentation only? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, we would like to go ahead and have you take a vote on this item as well as a recommendation to the board to approve the rate increase.
Okay. Mayor Schneider?
I guess from a policy perspective, I understand that we're using and there's been discussion of this in prior years, a moving average to not have, the rates fluctuate wildly. Certainly the 3.901% is a lot lower than what actual inflation in this area is running. Would staff agree with that assessment? And what does that mean to next year and the year after that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good point, Mayor. And yes, we know that the rolling average doesn't keep pace with rapid increases in a particular year. And I think that the index was seen as a way to help, again, smooth out fluctuations, sharp fluctuations on a year-to-year basis. And I think it's important to remember there's always the balance of needing to pay for infrastructure, but also sort of being mindful about impacts on housing affordability. And you'll note in the table, the second attachment, the single family residence, as Julie mentioned, it's going to be just $2 below 10,000 for a new single family house. And that's a significant amount of money. And so I think, it is a function of trying to help balance out, the need to provide some reasonable increases in revenues, but also being mindful about impacts on affordability. I would say too that the rolling average has proven to be sort of beneficial from the agency perspective during the recession when we had pretty significant declines in inflation. The index and the rate actually did decline, but the amount of the declines was also mitigated as a result of that rolling 5-year average. So we didn't see big drops happening in a particular year. So it works both ways, I think, and I think highlights the benefits of having that 5-year rolling index.
Thank you. Mayor Mays.
Move to recommend the annual adjustment as presented.
Second.
Motion by Mayor Mays, second by Mayor Jones. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand. Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? I got that as passing unanimously.
Thank you.
Takes us on to our next topic. Next up, TDT expenditure request. Let's see. Julie, are you going to be summarizing this for us
That's
again?
me again.
And I won't murder your last name again this time. I'll just go, I'll say hi, Julie. Thank you very much. Basically, this is my city's presentation. So it's even great to have Julie here to present this. So thanks, Julie. Take it away.
I can't tell if Terry Keys is here, but I'll give you the overview. And then if you have questions, I'm not sure if he's here. So the city of Cornelius has requested to use up to $1.4 million of their TDT funds, and they've described what they want to use it for in 2 separate memos that are attached. The first is for $1 million toward projects near 19th and Davis. I think that's associated with an affordable housing project, and they want to combine TDT funds with developer funds for that project, as well as CDBG community development block grant funds for that project. And then they also are requesting for up to $400,000 for sidewalk improvement projects along collectors in Cornelius. There's several of them listed in the memo, and they're also combining TDT funds with CDBG funds and city street maintenance funds. Staff has determined these projects are eligible for expenditure, and the WCCC TAC recommended approval at their March 3rd meeting. So I don't know if Terry's here, if you have specific project questions. Or I could try.
Yeah, I don't see Terry in the
questions.
attendees.
Yeah. No questions? Would anyone care to make the motion to approve? Mayor Mays.
Move to approve.
Motion
I'll
by
second.
and second by Councilor Rippey. So first, second, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions? Thank you very much. Okay, that takes us on to MSTIP Opportunity Fund request. Consider request for Beaverton to use some MSTIP Opportunity Fund funds. Let's see. So,
Mayor, Chris Deffenbach's actually going to do this presentation for us today.
oh, okay. I don't have to murder somebody else's name. Chris.
That's right. That's right. Thank you. And I think we should find out where everybody went this week that didn't invite us, because Diami's gone as well. So I'm going to present a Mstip Opportunity Fund request from the city of Beaverton. They're requesting $20,750 for 3 different grants, all related to Safe Routes to School program. One is an extension of the existing regional travel options grant that they have for Metro for Safe Routes to School. And then the other 2 are for 2 different years for the state Safe Routes to School program. This is the state Safe Routes to School program that focuses on the education, Safe Routes to School education. And the funding in the Mstip Opportunity Fund is available due to the Board of County Commissioners support last month for advancing Mstip Opportunity Fund with a placeholder amount of $7.5 million of the Mstip 23-28 funding allocation, so that we don't miss the opportunity to apply for grants for this year. So with that, I guess one other thing to say is that there will be future Safe Routes to School grants coming forward for you. This is the education component. Later, we expect there'll be grants for the construction program. So, and again, this funds will be working with the Beaverton School District. So Jean Seneschal Biggs is here if there are any further questions. The WCC TAC did vote to support this at their meeting on March 4th. 3rd.
Whenever it was. TAC recommended. Okay. Any questions on this one?
Chris, we'll just clear up the secret though. Everybody's at the National League of Cities meeting in Washington, D.C. hearing the president speak right now, I think.
Oh, wow.
Very cool.
That is cool.
Well, didn't look like there's any questions or a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Second.
Mayor Lanahan with the motion, second with Councilor Pace. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Passed unanimous.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Okay, let's see now. That takes us into MSTIP 23-28, draft evaluation metrics. Okay, this is to review the final draft evaluation metrics and project proposal packet and make a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners for the use in guiding MSTIP project evaluations. We have a small group of presenters. We've got Chris Deffenbach, Jessica Pels, and Jonelle Bell.
Yeah, and just real quickly before the team gets going on this, I did want to come back to a couple of the comments that Commissioner Rogers made at the beginning about the question about the major streets focus in the MSTIP program. And I did want to step back, and I think we realized as we've been focused in on talking about evaluation metrics, we probably forgot to step back a little bit and just do a little reminder about the fundamental eligibility criteria and the desired outcomes for the program, which you've been briefed on previously. And so I just wanted to make a quick statement, and I think Jessica or Chris will probably touch on this in the presentation, but being on a major street as identified in that map of the system of countywide interest is a fundamental eligibility criteria. So if a proposed project doesn't meet that criteria, it wouldn't move into the evaluation stage. And so I think that's why you don't see that point emphasized in the evaluation metrics specifically. And then I think in terms of the sort of parity, if you will, or the distribution of funds across the county, that's also captured, but it's captured as one of the desired outcomes of the program. So even a more broad set of guidance and criteria that apply to the program. So I hope that we've addressed both of those issues and in various parts of the different program requirements. And like I said, we're happy to discuss that a little bit further as we get into the presentation or after.
Well, and I think we'd be remiss not to understand also that if the group as a group recommends something that isn't, as long as it does fall within the acceptance criteria, but if we all chose to invest in a particular area because we thought that was of the right countywide significance, that could be the recommendation for too. I doubt that we see that in my history of being with this group. We've always strove to be pretty close on the distribution throughout all the districts, right? Try to pick projects up everywhere, because that's kind of the way this was, I hate to say it, originally sold to the public when it was voted on and passed, you know, in its original entireties before it became part of the given tax base.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
And I see Mayor Linehan has her hand raised.
Yeah.
Yes, Stephen, I just wanted a clarification. Did you say that the major streets, it's not implied, it's in the system, but it's not an implied, it's clearly spelled out somewhere? Like,
yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point. So we have desired outcomes that sort of are very general guidance for the program. We have eligibility criteria, so that's where the major streets component gets captured. And now we're down into the evaluation metrics. So a project we think is consistent with the outcomes and the eligibility criteria, then it can move into the evaluation stage.
And that's always been a hang up. I mean, we've had that discussion many times at this table, is making sure the projects are on the basic countywide map of significance for projects.
That's correct. And the WCCC, I believe it was in November, recommended a few amendments to the map of countywide interest, and then the board later concurred with those amendments. And so the map has been updated for this round of the MSTIP allocation process as well.
So Mayor Linehan, I think that answers it right, that it's explicit. It's not implicit, it's explicit.
Correct.
Great.
Thank you.
No, that's a good question. Thank you. Chris, do you want to lead off?
Well, I would just like to introduce Jessica Pelt. She's been working closely with us. You have not seen her as much. She's been doing all the hard work behind the scenes. And she's been very involved in working with the groups to develop these evaluation metrics that really, think of them as really helping us describe the strengths of these projects when we go out and share them with the public. It's really a way for you, when you submit projects, to describe what makes your project, what the characteristics of your project. So I'm going to turn it to Jessica, but Stephen and I are both here to answer any questions that come up. And let me just say one last thing, I guess, is that what we're really looking for you today is to send a recommendation to the Board of Washington County Commissioners for the use of these evaluation metrics as we send out the packet of information we'll be asking you to respond to. So Jessica will walk us through from the beginning.
Yep. Thank you. I'm Jessica Pels. I'm a senior transportation planner. Next slide, please. So an overview of what I'm going to go through today is the recommended action, as Chris was getting to, a little bit about the project proposal packet, the evaluation metrics development and community engagement. We did some technical development process and the community engagement process. The proposed evaluation metrics, and we'll show how those interface with the desired outcomes that Stephen had mentioned. Next steps, and then the call for projects. Next slide, please. So first, to start it out, the recommended action is that WCCC make a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners to use the proposed evaluation metrics to guide the Mstip 23-28 funding allocation. The WCCC TAC did recommend WCCC approval at their March 3rd meeting. They recommended approval of the metrics and updated measures, which we did update several in response to discussion at the TAC to respond to the idea that projects have a demonstrable benefit rather than just being in a location of high equity priority need. Next slide, please. So first, to go over the project proposal packet, and this is included in the WCCC packet. And this goes to what Stephen was saying about the eligibility criteria. It has several questions in there. First, to get an idea of just what is the project purpose and description. And then we have a section about project readiness and eligibility, and it does include the questions intended to right away showcase whether it's eligible or not, including does it meet multimodal needs? Is it located on the Streets of Countywide Interest map? And is it adopted in a locally adopted plan? I think we've talked to you before about our Mapping Mstip GIS-based program, and that has many layers of information that is available for cities and other partners to use. And one of the layers is the Streets of Countywide Interest map. So it's really easy to look on there and identify where a project location is and see what's around it and whether it is on an eligible facility. In the future, when we get the projects all proposed after the call for projects window is done, we will work on mapping those, and then everyone can see what they're near, where they're located, and what kind of equity priority score they get on the equity index. The other section of the application has questions about project outcomes, and those are really intended to see how well the projects meet the evaluation metrics that we're talking about today. Next slide, please. This picture is just to show an example of what the equity index looks like. This is the total score equity index, so that's encompassing the demographic characteristics, neighborhood characteristics, and transportation deficiency. But if you're in the Mapping Mstip program, you can click off the total score and you can click on any of the other ones individually. And then you can also click around in the layers of health and safety, active transportation, the roads, which includes the Streets of Countywide Interest, the different boundaries. So there's a lot of information there that can be used to help evaluate the projects. Next slide, please. To go through the technical development of the evaluation metrics, we started back in December with our technical work group, which held meetings in December and January as we went through the process of figuring out the universe of measures that could potentially be used to look at the projects, and then narrowing those down to metrics that supported technical evaluation. So then when we got to a final draft, we sent that out via email for the technical work group to review and comment on, as well as the project proposal packet in advance of going to the WCCC TAC. At the WCCC TAC, we had a recommendation from them on March 3rd, as well as overview updates in January and February. We were previously here at WCCC as well, and we heard feedback from the WCCC through this process to focus on historically disadvantaged populations, to look at bike ped gaps, look at congestion and bottlenecks, consider input from local staff, which we did by having them on our technical work group and consulting with them through this process, and make sure small projects can compete. And that's always, I think, it can be a challenge sometimes when it gets to the overall project list. Next slide, please. So here, I'm going to pause and turn it over to our consultant, John L. Bell, to talk about the community engagement and how that fed into the evaluation metrics.
Great, thank you, and good morning or afternoon, I think, everyone. As was mentioned, we had a chance to work with the county to really advance what I think is a pretty robust community engagement effort. In particular, an effort to really engage historically marginalized communities. And so some of the measures chosen based on what is important to community are listed here. You'll note some of the things that were highlighted: bicycle and pedestrian safety, specifically sidewalk and bike lane gaps and improvements to street lighting, increase safe access to important locations, options that really limit the effects of air pollution, concerns with high growth areas causing more traffic and delay on heavily used primary routes. And something that came up a fair amount was the notion of needing more transit service and better access to transit with a focus on communities who face the greatest transportation challenges. And also with us is my colleague, Fabiola. So Fabiola, I don't know if you want to add some additional detail as well.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. The only thing that I'll add is that the engagement activities that we've had have been very robust. We've been working very closely through the whole process with Centro Cultural. Other close collaborations have been with Bienestar, with Muslim Educational Trust, and we're continuing to work with Unite as we round out our engagement efforts in the next few months. And something that has come out loud and clear is that folks are really grateful for the opportunity to engage in this process, and how important it is to have to strengthen relationships and partnerships for longer term benefits. And so that's the only context that I'll add. And I'm just grateful for you all making this a priority through this this funding cycle.
Great, thanks, Fabiola. Next slide, please.
Excuse me, I have a question, if I may.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I have a quick question about the folks who attended regarding the community engagement. Can you give us an idea of who attended and what those demographics might have looked like?
Yeah, I can jump in here. So what we did to capture demographics was in the registration, we asked if folks identified with the equity priority communities that we had identified, and about all of the demographic information is optional, and it's not uncommon to have a lot of folks not want to provide that information. But what we saw is that we were reaching the communities that we had identified, specifically folks that identify as BIPOC, folks that are living with lower incomes, and folks living with disabilities. Those were the communities that we really had to focus on, that we've had to focus on in this process. We also invited folks to fill out an evaluation form afterwards with more specific demographics, and that just reaffirmed that we were reaching the communities that we intended to. A lot of the ways that we know that we again, that we're reaching those communities is that self-disclosure, which is, I'm sorry, that we're going to have ongoing opportunities for folks to be able to provide that information. But a lot of what we're doing is reaching folks by proxy. So with close collaborations with community-based organizations that whose community members that they serve are the folks that we are trying to reach. That's how we're gathering most of our, that we know that we're reaching those folks. I don't know, General, if you wanted to add anything to that.
No, I think that covered. And Mayor, if you're looking for the specific sort of percentages, I'm sure we can get that information as well. But as Fabiola indicated, a part of the strategy was really to rely on our culturally specific, trusted community-based organizations who we know are better, frankly, at engaging hard to reach communities than perhaps government agencies might be, or government efforts. And so we saw, as a result of that, through Muslim Education Trust or Centro Cultural or some of the other engagement, we saw those priority communities really showing up, oftentimes for their first engagement in any sort of government sort of activity.
And if you could follow up with the numbers, I would really appreciate that. That's what I was also curious about.
Absolutely, will do.
Yeah, Mayor, this is Stephen Roberts. I think we'll be preparing an outreach summary from this first round of outreach, and I also wanted to point out that we had conducted an online survey that we've briefed you on, and I think what we tend to find is that those outreach efforts tend to reach a predominantly whiter, older, more affluent population than is reflective necessarily of the countywide population. And so we view both the community-based organization outreach and then the online survey tools as being very complementary in terms of helping us get a broad understanding of community input.
Get out of the box, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, Councilor Pace.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple of questions. One of them was, and I may have missed this, but on the equity map, there were areas in gray that I didn't see reflected in the legend. And so maybe because I'm a newbie here today, but I was wondering if I missed something or if there was.
Whitney, can you go back to the equity map slide? So these are by census tract, and if they are in gray, well, they're also transparent over the top of the city boundaries here.
I see, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the city boundaries are typically shown in gray. It's possible that it's a low priority score that is shown in white, and then it's transparent over the city boundary.
I see the medium low priority.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that is accurate. That's what you're seeing is those areas of gray without another color or a more bluish color superimposed. Those would be areas within a city, but not identified as a census area of equity concern.
Okay, great. My second thing was I noticed that some of the tracks are inclusive of employment areas, but that was inconsistent with the census data on the equity categories.
Can you repeat that question? I'm not sure I'm following.
I noticed that some of the tracks are inclusive of employment areas, but that was inconsistent with the census data on some of the equity categories. And
yeah, that might be a question to follow up with.
Yeah.
More specifically, yeah, to drill down into that. I think you're right. I mean, you will see areas of predominantly employment, but you may also find that demographically, those may be areas of equity concern.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe predominantly people, or maybe predominantly employment area, but the people who live in that district may
or nearby.
Oh, yeah. I've actually that sparks an answer here for me. This is the total score. If you'll remember, this is aggregating the neighborhood characteristic score, the transportation deficiency score, and the demographic score. So it's not specifically about where people live in the total score, because the neighborhood characteristics is drawing where people want to go. So it's highlighting areas of low income jobs, a high density of low income jobs, medical centers, schools, community centers, things like that. So it's showing where people want to go. We wanted to make sure that we are also capturing access to places people want to go.
Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Okay, I think we can go back to the metrics slides. Yes, here. This next two slides goes through the proposed evaluation metrics and the outcomes they address. Every metric addresses at least one and typically more of the desired outcomes. If you'll remember, the desired outcomes are equity, safety, economic vitality, natural environment, and livability. And then within each metric, there is at least one and usually two measurable factors. For example, and this is the one that we changed in response to the WCCC TAC discussion, the first metric, reduces barriers and disparities faced by historically excluded communities, has a measurable factor that the project will demonstrably improve roadway, bikeway, sidewalk, or other travel conditions for an area of high need, as identified with a medium, high, or high score in the equity index. So as we're going through, every one of these has something we can actually measure through a data source of some kind, or through a qualitative response from a city or a proposing jurisdiction. So the other metrics improves equitable access, and that's where that neighborhood score really comes into play. increases equitable opportunities for walking and biking, increases equitable access to transit, increases vehicle travel reliability, improves safety for all travelers, enhances the built or natural environment or improves climate resiliency, and brings additional funding to Washington County. Next slide, please. The next steps in the evaluation metrics process is for WCCC to make a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners. And then the board will be asked to confirm the evaluation metrics to guide the project selection at their meeting on April 5th. Next slide. Now here's the big part of it, the call for projects. So the board is anticipated to confirm the evaluation metrics and project proposal packet on April 5th. And then the call for projects would be open from April 6th through May 3rd. Now, we have been meeting with city staff over the past couple weeks to talk preliminarily about projects that cities might be interested in proposing. So those conversations are already happening, and I'm sure you're all being briefed by your staff on those conversations. In June, July, well, May and June, we'll be compiling the all project list, and then we'll be asking for recommendations on the prioritized project list in July. In August and September, we will be doing community engagement on the prioritized project list. So going back to many of the same groups that we have already engaged with to ask for their input on any of these proposals and how they align with their community priorities. Next slide, please. And then this you've seen before, this is our project timeline, but this is exciting because we're now here at milestone number 2. We are at March 2022, where the board directs staff to release the project solicitation packet. So we're pretty excited about that. Next slide, please. And this is our contact information and the end of our presentation.
Thank you, Jessica and Janelle and everyone else and Chris. Mayor Schneider, you got a question?
Yeah, I guess I want to know whether the Board of County Commissioners has had any discussion, and maybe Commissioner Fye, you may be better apt to answer this, but whether there's been workshop discussions like we've had here, kind of pre-presentations about this, and whether there are, I know some of the cities, including Tigard, have sort of pushed some certain things that have made, I think, perhaps some county commissioners a little uncomfortable around active transportation. But can you comment on whether this is well poised to be adopted, or at least get the support as it's sitting here from the current commission, if there's been discussion? I know I'm kind of asking you to make a guess, but I bet you have a pretty good idea.
Yeah, that's a great question. We actually have been doing regular updates to the board on the similar schedule as the WCCC TAC and the WCCC. So the board had a conversation about this at their meeting on March 8th, actually last Tuesday. And then I believe that Stephen and Chris and Aaron have been meeting one-on-one with the commissioners to talk through this process as well, leading up to the call for projects. So I think we feel pretty good about how this is going. And of course, I would let Commissioner Fye weigh in.
Thank you, Jessica. I think you summarized it very well. I was just gonna let Mayor Schneider know that we did have a presentation, and I don't know about well poised. I'm not sure where other commissioners are feeling, but I think it's going in the right direction. I feel like people are asking questions around, about the engagement, some of the demographics and who was there and how many attended. And some concerns around the projects being multimodal and taking some of the, we have a lot of lessons learned from past Mstip opportunities and projects, and to make sure we carry on those lessons learned and we avoid some of the mistakes that have been made on some of these major streets improvements that have that Washington County residents benefited. So I think it's well poised, but I'm not sure. But this leads me to creates an opportunity to actually ask a question to Stephen Roberts. And this is a comment that Commissioner Rogers made earlier on. I think he said, and this is a clarifying question, Stephen, so just so you know, I'm just for my own understanding, Commissioner Rogers testified future projects, and I'm assuming he means whatever project that gets for this Mstip gets approved is the projects he's interested in seeing bonding. Is that correct? So it's future Mstip projects is what he's advocating.
I think that is correct. I have not actually had a direct conversation with him in detail at this point, so I'm not exactly sure maybe what he has in mind, but I do think that certainly was the implication from his comments earlier. And I think his question is, does that increase the potential capacity for project improvements? So that's part of the evaluation that we're working on.
Mm-hmm. And we don't really know the projects that will get approved, right? So this is
correct, right? So really, we're just about to solicit the call for projects, and so I know Aaron and maybe Jessica have been meeting with a lot of our counterparts at the cities to gauge interest in potential projects that will be coming forward, and we've been doing some work here at the county as well, looking at potential projects that we might want to put forward as projects that would move into the evaluation process as well. So this is sort of the next step that would kick off the evaluation process. So looking at the projects that are submitted, do they meet the eligibility criteria? If they do, then they can move into the evaluation phase of the process. Yeah. And I was going to say, maybe to Mayor Snyder's question, when we briefed the board on this a week ago, we heard some of the comments I think that you heard from Commissioner Rogers about, the concern that the evaluation metrics really didn't specifically mention major streets. So I hope we've addressed that concern. And I think the parity issue again as a broader sort of desired outcome. And I think the well, maybe that was it. Yeah. So I feel while there were a few comments and concerns that we've heard, I'm hoping that generally these evaluation criteria are being viewed by our board members. I can't speak for them obviously, but I think these are going to be consistent with what we've been talking about in terms of those desired outcomes, and then nesting within the eligibility criteria of major streets.
Stephen, I had another question actually about something that Commissioner Rogers did ask. It was the term equitable, and maybe you can point me in the direction where that might be defined. I know that we've touched on that before, but maybe you can remind me where that definition of equitability or equity is for this.
Yes, I am gonna ask maybe if Jessica or Chris might have their fingers on it or can find it, but I know in some of our previous briefings, we've actually described what the definition of equity is in the framework that we've adopted for our community engagement for this effort. And so we have tried to provide some description of what equity means. And equity is a nuanced term, and it's really the idea fundamentally of trying to identify benefits and burdens, let's say, of a particular transportation project, and are those benefits and burdens distributed in a somewhat fair, equitable way across different groups of our population, right? And I see John L. has his hand up. Rescue me.
Yeah, happy to weigh in. It's an excellent question. I think this panel will recall about 2 years ago, the County Board of Commissioners passed an equity resolution, which described equity priority communities, some of whom you can probably already guess, minority populations, given the growth and the huge concentration within Washington County, as well as other populations. So that's the basis of how equity is being defined, and we can make sure we can circulate that resolution as well as how equity is being defined. But within the transportation context, it's also as you look at some of the key measures, is looking at concentrations of BIPOC communities, low income communities that we know historically are good proxies, as well as good measures for determining whether or not transportation investments are resulting in equitable outcomes. And so that's why you look at the equity index in terms of how we're weighting access to jobs, for example, oftentimes only requiring a high school diploma as a proxy to help folks get out of poverty. We're looking at investments relative to sidewalk improvements, access to transit. So those are some of the specific measures within the context of the equity index. But to answer your specific question in terms of how equity is being defined, the basis of that is the resolution passed by the Washington County Commission.
And maybe we could just, Stephen or someone from the county could remind me where that is. I'd like to read it, and maybe we all should have a copy of that just to look at that again. That would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, and Jessica just sent me a message that was covered at our December WCCC briefing. So I'm trying to open that up now myself.
Councillor Pace.
Thanks. As Janelle was speaking, I was thinking, is the county going to apply a scoring structure or maybe a heat map to compare projects? Just to, what do you call it? To prioritize them regarding equity?
Well, we have some measures centered around equity, and we have, of course, the equity index that we showed in that one slide. And so on the staff side, we won't be scoring per se, but we will be evaluating and probably showing a fully met, halfway met, not met sort of idea. So for the WCCC to take a look at across the board, across all the measures.
Great. Thank you, Jessica.
Yeah, and I think that's something that Chris and I talked about in the briefing that not everybody's had is historically what we've gotten out of it is just a circle, right? That literally that's the ratings. It's not a 0 to 99 or even a 1 to 5. It's usually been a circle. And if the circle's blank, then it's considered of little or no. Half a circle, like Jessica was talking about, is it's contributing something. And if it's a full circle, it's rating. So it's almost like a 1, 2, 3, where 1 is nothing, 2 is something, and 3 is fairly well. So I think there's a lot of that. And to John L's point too, we've got to look at it on the input and the output side. And I think we've done a better job this time of looking on the input side of the equation, right? We're reaching out into our community-based organizations, right? That's something that our city has always found of great use, right? Is anytime we partnered with Centro, we probably get more people and a better answer that reaches out deeper into our community. So I think that's something that we've all continued to, we've Adelante, Centro, Met, all these groups get more out into the community than the pigment of this group may allow us to normally.
Right. It makes sense. Better data equals better solutions. Thank you, Mayor Delane, and thank you.
Input. Yeah, John L.
Yes, and thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councilor, for that question. I don't want to get lost sort of what is being considered here relative to the Transportation Equity Index. This is a very powerful tool, I think, that in addition to the Mstip process, could be applicable within your various jurisdictions as you're looking at your own sort of investments in transportation. It's becoming a best practice. TriMet, we built an equity index some years ago that TriMet has been using to invest in future service enhancement. ODOT is using it in various efforts to determine where they ought to first build a number of ramps, accessible ramps. And what's so critically important in terms of really integrating equity into a transportation process, Mayor, as you indicated earlier, equity is really both a process as well as an outcome. It's both in terms of how you engage the communities, right? So that's why it was so critically important that we work part and parcel with trusted community-based organizations, elevating the capacity within communities relative to these various topics, but it's also important the outcome side. That's where the index really aims to get at. I will say it's more of an art than a science. It's another measure by which the board and all of you can use to consider whether or not you're right track, wrong track relative to making investments in communities, frankly, that have not always been thoughtfully invested in. And then the last thing I'll say is this puts the county consistent with a lot of what's happening both here locally as well as nationally. You may have taken a look at the United States Department of Transportation, their strategic plan. Equity is a core element there, as well as most recently the infra grant requirements, how communities are prioritizing and investing in equitable communities was a key score. So a tool like this will also put, I think, the county as well as all of your jurisdictions in a strong position of also competing for federal funds relative to equity.
Yeah, thank you, John L. I think that's an important point too. This mapping MSTIP index tool that we've developed, we've shared with all the different cities, and hope that it will be a useful tool for not just this process, but for lots of other processes going forward. So we certainly encourage the staff from the cities to take advantage of it, and it'll be an evolving tool, I'm sure, over time. And we certainly want to have discussions with staff if they see opportunities to enhance or add information to it over time. So we do hope that it'll prove to be a useful tool now and in the future.
Questions, comments on the process, what we've got here so far, basically the draft evaluation metrics? Yes, Ashley.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to say that, including equity in these metrics is so important. It's the way we can truly show progress. We can show our communities that we want to invest in ways that we never have before. So I'm really grateful that that's been included. So with that, in my statement of support for equity, I would move that we approve the MSTIP 23 to 28 draft evaluation metrics.
Great. I got a motion.
Second.
We got a second by Councilor Pace. Mayor Mays, any further discussion?
Nope, I was just going to second, so it's good.
Got beat to the second. Okay.
All good.
That's okay. Hey, and I think that it's a good thing, right? We're looking at the input side and we're looking at the output side, right? Who's benefiting and who's being subjected, right? It's both things, right? Who benefits and who's subjected, right? So if you do a project, we're looking at it, right? We're looking at that outcome on the out, and so I think that's good for all of them, right? It's easy to it's historically easier for us to look at safety, right? Is it reducing accidents? Is it that's kind of an easy metric, right, to go on. The equity one, I think we're still trying to get our hands wrapped around, right? What's the right answer and how does that work sometimes, right? Councilor Fye? Commissioner Fye.
That's okay.
I need one more title. Can somebody throw a third title in there?
I'm still getting used to that title myself, so you're okay, Mayor. I was just gonna say just show support in what you said, Mayor, that this is a uncharted territory. I feel like MSTIP has been here for a long time, but this is the first time we're doing this extensive process, and it's going to feel like a cultural shock at first. But I think the learning more about the team, Stephen's team, and the work that they're doing around the community engagement and the feedback that they're getting, it's really empowering in so many ways, not just to ourselves, to even to community, to find out what we're intent to do with this money, and then to go back and say, how have you been left out of this process, and what would you like us to consider future process? So I'm really excited. I haven't been here before for the past MSTIP projects or any engagement process, but I'm really excited this future. And I've always felt like when we were starting in this process that the future is in our hands. And I'm really glad that we're designing a future that will bring more people to this process and more people to engage and more people to contribute, not just us deciding, hey, do this road, because I might know the roads that are problematic, but there are people who really know roads that are super unsafe, and that's the intent for this process. And I'm just really glad to be on this journey with all of you and supporting equity. I know it's a new term, especially around transportation, but I think we're doing it, and it's going to be interesting to see what projects we approve of. So that's all I was going to say, Mayor.
Thank you.
And maybe if I could just
and I'd
tag
probably
on.
take a historic reflection, right? A big one in our community was 10th Street, right? The complete rebuilding of 10th Avenue. And I look at it and I go, well, obviously it checked well on safety because it was reducing accidents. And then I went, well, how does it work into the equity lens, right? Economically, Cornelius is very challenged. It really improved the frontage of that particular area. It made it safer for people. And we have a ton of people that are going places to work. Could they more safely and efficiently get through that intersection, right? Did it hurt anyone, or did it actually benefit those that live there? And that, I think it would have scored well on those, right? And that's a very old MSTIP program that actually passed in the original voted activity, and we just got that done in the last 5-10 years finally. So I think we've been doing good work in the past. It just looking at how we continue to make sure we're looking through the new lens and doing that work with the sensitivity. Stephen, I walked all over you. What'd you have?
No, yeah, I just was gonna maybe just make one final comment. I think, to build on what Commissioner Fye was just saying, and I think what you're saying, we really just see this as the natural evolution of this program. This is not, we're not charting a radical new direction for MSTIP. We're really trying to ensure that the program is considering equity, and that we are trying to, as you said, get a broader set of input that reflects the different perspectives and needs in the community, and hopefully then demonstrating that the projects support those objectives. And so I think you're right. As we've looked back at the program, a lot of the projects have been excellent. They improve transit, they provide access to transit, bikes and sidewalks, bike lanes and sidewalks. And so really the program fundamentally, I think, has been doing okay in this regard. We're just being much more intentional in our thinking around how we discuss these issues and how that helps inform the project prioritization process.
Yeah, I would consider it less revolutionary and more evolutionary. We're heading in the right direction that we should be going, and we're taking the right lens to this.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. Thank you.
Well, I have a motion. I have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Looks like it passed unanimously, and we're only a little bit behind time.
Just a little
So that's great that we're moving into the next meaty topic. So this is the I-205 project of Regional Transportation Plan Amendment. Share comments on the ODOT recommendation for commitment for the 205 toll project and the Jpac recommendation to Jpac. And we will be introduced to this by Chris. And I think we also have Julia. Yep, Julia is here. Is Julia? I didn't know if I saw her from Sherwood.
She's just getting promoted up.
Okay, great. So she'll be here too.
There she is.
Basically, we've got this action. It's going to MPAC. Looks like March 30th. And then we've got Jpac's recommendation. Chris, you talked with me a lot in our opening about how Jpac did a lot of work, right, to get through amendments and everything else. Maybe you can share some of that with folks today, and Julia too. So I'll turn it over to you at this point, Chris.
Yeah, so I will just recap briefly what's in your 686-page Jpac packet. So Jpac did, you'll remember that I think it was in February, Jpac was scheduled to make a recommendation on the proposal to add the I-205 toll project to the Regional Transportation Plan, and also to act then on a Metropolitan Transportation Program fund allocation of 27 or 28 million. And you can't spend money on it until it's in the RTP. So both of them were moving forward together. At that time, there were just so many questions swirling around in February at Jpac that Jpac recommended to Jpac to give us another month to try to sort this out about how we address the various questions that are coming up. Because even though this amendment was, ostensibly about the I-205 toll project itself, it brought into focus the entire Oregon toll program. And while the Jpac worked very hard, many meetings with Jpac members and with ODOT staff to work through, really have people identify what questions they had. And what was super helpful was at the February Jpac meeting, every Jpac member identified the questions they had that they felt needed to be addressed, because it was just, even though it was all merging together. So there was a good list of concerns from all Jpac members that really helped Jpac and ODOT work through to come up with an approach to address those concerns. And I think overall, there's a big recognition that we're not going to go know everything right now. This is the beginning of a process. It's going to take several years, but what we can do at this point is get a process in place that helps us build trust and confidence that there will be input and checkpoints along the way to better understand, to weigh in as this the whole toll program moves forward. So even though it was ostensibly about the I-205 toll project, it really triggered looking at the entire toll program. So I'll just quickly say that Clackamas County staff is really helpful in focusing with the work that they've been doing with their cities in Clackamas County to address the concerns, to raise the concerns they had. And again, all of Jpac members raised questions. So Jpac worked with ODOT, and there were three things that came out of the Jpac meeting. One was 6 outcomes that ODOT committed to as part of this. I'm just looking for the right packet here with all of my stuff in it. With 6 outcomes that they committed to, and these really were intended to address the concerns that were raised. And I'm just going to read you the titles of these so that you'll see get the flavor of this. One of them was to elevate the role of local policymakers and stakeholders by creating a regional toll policy advisory committee and clarifying the role for local decision making. We saw this process begin at the R1 Act toll work group a couple of weeks ago, where ODOT laid out their intent to move forward in creating a new work group, where there could really be the kind of discussions in a more focused way that Jpac and ODOT and others have been having all over the place. So really a place to have these discussions. There was also a commitment to developing a diversion impact and mitigation plan in coordination with the region. And this one is super important, that it includes, really helps set the stage for the communities adjacent to the tolling to be really engaged, not just during the environmental analysis period and a typical mitigation, but to monitor over time and address diversion as it develops and changes over time. The third commitment was to, this is an important one, enhance the connection between the regional mobility pricing project and the I-205 toll project. In other words, a major concern was tolling starts on I-205, and then what happens if nothing else moves forward? Then you just got one facility tolled, and how does that work? So there was a lot of work in coordinating those schedules and decision processes. So there's more confidence that the whole program moves forward and not just the I-205 project. So that was an important one. The fourth one was centering equity in the process and outcomes. And again, you know that there's been this equity mobility advisory committee that's been meeting. There's been a lot of work around the country already and how to mitigate the impacts for low income people who need to use the freeways and pay tolls. So just moving forward on that and other equity processes and procedures that that group is already working on. And then 2 more. One, again, increasing regional transit and multimodal transportation options, that there needs to be a better plan for how that's going to move forward. And also the fiscal transparency. And this is one that came up a lot because we don't know much. We don't know yet how much revenue will be raised. We don't know what all the costs are going to be. So be a commitment, since we don't know everything right now, a commitment to continue to work through the process in a transparent way. So with those and with these were then committed, included in your Jpac packet, you'll see they're included as an attachment in the ordinance. And also the project description for the actual amendment was modified to fold in the gist of these commitments so that they aren't just commitments, they're codified in the action that Jpac would take. And with that, it was unanimous at Jpac, which is pretty amazing to support this.
I don't think it was unanimous. I think that some of the Clackamas County folks did not.
No, the MTIP amendment.
Oh.
The MTIP amendment. Then when it came time to spending the money, a couple of the Clackamas County folks didn't approve the MTIP amendment, but I think ODOT convinced everyone else that you can't do an environmental analysis if you don't have some preliminary engineering of where the gantries are, because you need to know right-of-way impacts and all stuff like that. So everyone else at Jpac voted in support of the 27 to 28 million to go to the project. So Julia, do you want to add anything for the flavor, the discussion there? I covered the facts. Do you want to add the?
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add. I think you did a really good job describing that. I think that there were still some concerns about the timing and not, wanting to maybe have a little bit more assurance that tolling on 205 wasn't going to happen unless everything, the whole regional tolling program happened. But generally there was the realization that we need to move forward in some way. And a lot of these questions and certainty is going to be answered along the way. And like Chris said, there's just a certain amount of trust that has to be kind of given. And we got these commitments from ODOT, which was great, by the way. I think they really did a really, good job of, within a couple months, pulling together a lot of information and giving people the answers that they were asking for originally. So it was really good. Still uncertainty, still concerns, but a general consensus that we can move forward and trust that we're going to get these questions answered as we go forward. And that I think the commitment to have sort of elevating the decision making and elevating the transparency gave some more confidence that there will still be opportunities to chime in if things start going in different directions, that it wasn't just granting a blank check that was then nobody else was going to be able to chime in on. I don't really have much else to add other than that.
So we're happy to take questions. Just open it so you all can talk amongst you. I should note that because they're always dedicated, Garrett Pryor and Della Mosier are in the attendee list. So if you have a specific question for an ODOT staff, they're here to answer it.
And also I'll add, I was, I'm sort of speaking, I was the Jpac rep at that meeting. So that's why Chris has me on the list. I'm not the primary Jpac person. Don Oderman is as well. And I'm sure he could chime in as well on just thoughts, but the meeting itself, I was at and participating and voted on recommending approval of both the Mstip amendment and the RTP amendment to Jpac.
Questions, comments? I won't talk about the side bet Chris and I have on this. I win, Chris. See, they're all talked out.
That's right. Yeah, I would say that the discussion at the R1 Act toll work group was also very interesting, just beginning to think about what such a group should look and feel like. What should that charter be? What it should be. So that will be something else. And we have several of you sit on the R1 Act group and participate in those conversations as well.
So
No,
Jeff,
and
it's important.
Go ahead, Keith.
It's important. We don't get to vote on something on this today, so that's why we're not shutting up the storm.
But I think what the importance here is if there's something we have question or concern, it's loading up myself and or Mayor Callaway in preparation for Jpac on Thursday, right? That's part of why we time this meeting the way we do, is so that your reps to Jpac can be there. And I think we've done a lot of groundwork. And I would highlight 3 things out of that I thought were key, right? It's really getting the groundwork, as Chris has talked about, that regional tolling pricing committee. That I think is the biggest quote unquote win and a necessary group, and that's going to have a large influence going forward on how this develops and rolls to its next point. So I think actually, much like I know Keith was there when we talked about, or Jason, when we developed and who we put on when we got the new Region 1 Act, right? Who was there, who was going to be at that table, we knew it was going to have a large impact on how that program moved forward. So I think that's an important one of us to consider going forward, is how the folks are placed on that committee, because it's going to have a lot of impact on how the pricing moves forward. I think the equity one, so the number 4 point in agreement with the equity, you know, everybody knows my bent on this is you need to make sure that this doesn't just turn into another punishment for poor people driving to work, right? And I think that's where it gets hard for ODOT to do number 6, right? Everybody's been beating on ODOT. Is it 10 cents? Because if you're going to charge everybody 10 cents every time they go past the point, we've already talked all we're going to talk about it. Move on, right? But if you're talking about it being $10, whoa, that gets everybody's attention, right? If it's because we've seen what the rates are in different places around the country for different, tolling, and if it's $10, that's a very different impact. And the part of that equation that the calculus that ODOT struggles with, and you can jump in here if I'm wrong on this, is, well, who gets charged, right? Where do we put that point on? And this is a discussion Chris and I have talked about this, everybody's talked about this. When you talk about low income, that's one measure. But then you talk about what does it cost to live in the area? And now do you start hitting people that are below 90? I mean, we've got a number of in the 90,000. It says if you're going to be a family of 4 living in the Portland metropolitan area, you better be bringing home $90,000 somehow, or you're actually going backwards in the economic challenges, right? So where do we put that number, right? Where do you get toll exemption? That really is going to deeply affect how ODOT can collect the money. So, and I think that goes with the transparency, right? They've got to figure out that part. Garrett, you got something to let us know about here, or Metro Councilor?
Thank you, Mayor. I just had a comment. The income equity is a particularly big issue, particularly in the southern tier, because a lot of people are commuting from, say, Oregon City over to the employment areas over in Tualatin and Sherwood. I have suggested, and I have not gotten a response, that ODOT maybe could develop goals such that, for example, and this is just sort of a tabula rasa here. If for people who can demonstrate an income less than 80% of the average mean, the goal should be no more than X percent, maybe 5% toll impact above their current average wage. And it can be, and the question is, how do you do it? And so I have asked for this kind of thing. I think it would be helpful to set immediate goals on low income people, and then work from there, because at least it would set a target. So I have suggested this, but how to implement it with whether it's based upon tax or whether it's based upon vehicle size or vehicle age, I don't know. But I think this deserves some exploration.
Absolutely, I think that absolutely goes to that RTPC, right? As how do they interact with that? What numbers do they recommend? Where does it? Because right? You're going to punish someone. At what level do you punish, and at what level do you introduce it? And then also the burden, right? We've seen through the application of our systems and everything that's come through, how hard is it to even get a waiver, right? So, Mayor Mays.
Thanks, Jeff. Just interesting. If a system is created such that income impacts rates that are charged, then potentially we could do what some other countries do, in which other citations, or sorry, not other, if people get citations then become, instead of flat, they become a percentage of income. So if you're speeding and you're a very, everyone's harmed equally, depending if you're speeding, for instance.
Right. That $100 ticket means different things to different people, right? If you're in a leaky canoe, $100 ticket is very impactful. But you're in your Maserati and you're doing 185, you just don't even care, right? So it does open up the window to talk a larger discussion about other topics, right?
Yeah.
So what about this one, folks? Questions, concerns?
Mayor Delane, I just wanted to highlight, Commissioner Fye, of course, is on Jpac as well, and so I think ensuring that she's hearing the feedback is also important for everyone here. And I didn't know, Commissioner, if you wanted to jump in to say anything or not.
Not really. I think I agree with Mayor Delane that I'm talked out of this conversation as well. I think we're all up to, we'll see how it goes on Thursday. And I'm listening intensely on everyone's feedback, and we'll carry the message forward. Whether that's Mayor Callaway or myself, or Mayor Delane or myself, you'll have two people representing you at Jpac.
Yeah, and I see Mayor Mays, you had your hand up.
Thanks, Jeff. So do you have is it fairly well defined now? I haven't seen the packet of material for this. So
I'm sorry,
generally know the cost
I'm
of different elements of this.
I haven't finished reading my almost 700 pages of my Jpac agenda. Okay,
that's what happens if you get these big cushy jobs, volunteer gigs. You have to read those. That's what weekends are for. But is the money? Do we have a fairly good idea what they're thinking when it comes to just on the 205 with the bridge and the tolling elements?
I would say this.
Or is it still just a?
I am gonna absolutely do what I can do as the chair and go, Matt, Mr. Freitag, how are you doing?
Always happy to listen in on these excellent discussions.
So I think the point I was pivoting to Matt was we haven't done the NEPA, right? I don't think they have a full answer on what it's going to take to put the footings in for the 9 bridges. Help me if I'm wrong here, staff. But I think we're still they don't have a total number even.
Yeah.
Which was part of I think that was part of the frustration from the TPAC and JPAC, was that they wanted a little bit more financial transparency and certainty. And I think that the commitments that they made help define how the process is going to give us that, even if we don't have it now. So no, we don't have a lot of information, but we know how we're going to get that information before major decisions are made.
Yeah.
So we can claw, in general, the collective can claw back $30 million if we don't, if things go squarely, if we're not following the process or something.
We have a couple of representatives from the toll program that are on the call too. If there were some specific questions that you'd like to pose, but I did want to just step back and I think really appreciate the ODOT stepping up with a number of additional commitments. I think everybody can see this is a really, really difficult challenge to try to get to some sort of sense of consensus around how to proceed with this, and the importance of needing some funding to move the process forward so that they can evaluate a number of criteria that are going to be important to helping make some bigger decisions down the road is really important. And so, as Chris was saying, I think achieving unanimity at the staff level was a big lift. And so I think as this moves forward into the Jpac process, hopefully we'll see some sense of how this can move forward. And again, I think it is I think it was Garrett and Della at our last meeting really emphasized the need to just provide some additional funding to start diving in and helping to answer a lot of these big questions that people would like to know the answers to.
Garrett?
Yeah, I just, somebody brought up an issue and I thought maybe it's a point of confusion on my part. The addition of the $30 million is for the NEPA evaluation. And my question is that just for the location of the potential tolling gantries, or as somebody mentioned just a minute ago, also for the bridge abutments for all the bridges, all the bridge foundation abutments? I thought that was already covered under the previous evaluations. So I just wanted to clarify that.
I do not have the answer to that specifically, but I could promote promote Garrett, who's here, and I think he could answer if you'd like that in terms of exactly what that covers. Let me just try to find him.
Garrett's on.
Oh, okay, there he is. All right, he appeared.
Hi there.
So Garrett, you want to answer that one?
Sure, definitely. And I think I caught most of the question in transition. So correct me if I'm wrong there, Councilor Rosenthal. The I-205 improvements, meaning the third lane on the highway, the bridge improvements, all that piece of it, that's been through NEPA. So the dollars that are before you today, the 27 million, would help us complete the analysis on the tolling piece of it. And to do that tolling analysis piece, we have to design some of the actual physical toll gantries themselves. And so that it allows us to begin design, not complete it, begin it, and then complete the NEPA, the environmental analysis work for the tolling system.
And
sometimes I just
you already have right of way on this on the appropriate sections. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's why you design some of the footprint of the tolling gantries to make sure that that's correct. But that's what we'll be confirming in the work we're doing.
Okay, thank you.
That was a good one, Garrett, to differentiate where we were and what has already been gone through NEPA. Thank you very much, because I wasn't clear on that myself on all those those nine. I think it's nine sections, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Other questions, comments, feedback? Okay, we don't actually have a motion on this one, I don't think, do we, Chris?
No, it's just, and to provide you time, I mean, if you knew how much time staff spent trying to figure this out, it's a lot, and we have a lot ahead, so you may be tired of talking about it now, but I can tell you there's going to be more. So it is important to really, I think, try to understand this, because we do have a lot ahead of us. And I think Tara O'Brien is here from TriMet. I don't want to put her on the spot, but clearly one of the key things that people are worried about is how is there, if we think that people are going to take another mode, what other mode is there and how do we fund it? So there's really a litany of, or kind of use that word, a list of questions to be answered ahead. And remember, this is coming to Jpac as well. So for our Jpac reps, because it's a land use action, anything that goes for the regional transportation plan, I think everybody knows that we're unique and that our regional transportation plan meets federal requirements, but also state requirements, and the state requirements are tied to the land use system. So that's why it all comes to Jpac as well for its land use approvals.
I can just chime in quickly since Chris called us out on that one, but yes, especially over the past few months in digging into this amendment, I think it helped clarify the process for identifying the transit mitigations that will be necessary for specifically the 205 tolling project, but thinking more broadly about regional pricing as well. And that many of us at the staff level were having conversations with ODOT and many of the other jurisdictional partners to ensure that the language in the amendment helps clarify that process, and that through NEPA, we will be clearly identifying what transit and multimodal mitigations will be required. So look forward to the discussion at Jpac, but thank you to everyone else on the phone who helped through that process and talking through it.
Okay.
I think I've said it before, but this is crazy money, crazy money levels. Just, it's insane. But
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay. Well, moving on then. Next up is MPAC agenda. Mayor Truax is not here. Do we have somebody else?
Yeah, Chris, do you want to?
Yeah, I can jump in. I have to say it's going to be about tolling.
Shocking.
And MPAC's agenda has now become more diversified. You know, they spend a lot of time now on housing, homeless services, or wraparound services, and as well as garbage. So I think that as I understand, looking at the MPAC work program, that those two other items will continue to take time coming up on the MPAC agenda.
Any questions, comments?
And I think maybe we can cover it under Jpac, since the two bodies seem to have a lot of the same content here. Also, the upcoming discussions about RTP values and outcomes for the 2023 update.
Yeah, that might be moved to the next month out. I'm not sure, but that is certainly, we've talked about this before. That's the RTP update is something that this group's going to want to pay attention to.
Okay. Well, then I'll jump over to Jpac. Jpac agenda, basically on the consent agenda, they're going to be talking about the addition under resolution 225251, amending existing and adding, and it's 9 projects in support of the completion of various federal delivery requirements. So that's on the consent agenda. So I don't foresee there being a lot of concern or jump on that one. I think we'll see if everybody's talked out or not, because the action item is ordinance 21-1467, amending the 2018 regional transportation plan to include preliminary engineering phase of the 205 toll project and to clarify financial connections of the 205 project. So I think that's where all the time is going to be spent on Thursday. And basically after that, if anyone can still breathe, if there's oxygen online, we might get time to talk about the TV highway corridor project update. But everybody will be exhausted from talking about tolling on 205. Any other questions or comments for the Jpac? Great, then that takes us into other business. We got a bunch of items on there. And Beach, did you have something you wanted to have the group consider?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Delane. I appreciate that. As we all weigh in on, well, we're weighing in on a lot of significant and controversial regional transportation matters, like the I-205 tolling. Mayor Callaway asked that I raise a topic for discussion amongst this group. There continues to be some voices across the region speaking out with concerns about ODOT's proposed project to seismically enhance and add auxiliary lanes to the Boone Bridge on I-5 at Wilsonville. And that's being proposed in order to improve safety and address a persistent bottleneck on the I-5 system. So Mayor Callaway asked me to ask you whether this body would support the development of a letter of support from this body to the Boone Bridge project, addressed to ODOT, addressed to the Oregon Transportation Commission, and the Metro Council.
Mayor Mayes, you're
10 out of 10. Yes,
yes.
10 out of 10 every day and Sunday. I'll write that letter. Thank you.
I think we have a couple drafts already, knowing Mayor Callaway. But yeah, it's you wanted me to propose if there was support. Thank you, Mayor Mayes.
Others, questions, comments?
No, I would definitely second Mayor Mays's affirmative.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I don't know if everybody's aware of the I hate to use the term storm and ruin, but it really is over the question of whether the Boone Bridge project should include auxiliary lanes at all, right? If even if you expand it to 3, then do you count on? Because as we look at it now, I think ODOT and Matt or others can help me on this. I think it's really looked at as a technically 5 lanes, right? Because there's all the merge and diverge that goes on. Anybody that's driven through there sees it, right? You basically, one of the lanes is already given up already now with a ton of merge and diverge that affects everything that's going on there. So the question is, would we support, the continued look at the 5 lanes versus the 3 lanes? Yes, Kristen.
Thank you. From Wilsonville, of course, this is right through our community and affects our community greatly. I-5, it's something for the entire region, but we also share in the day-to-day within the city, as there's issues on I-5, there's issues in our city streets as well. And of course, people that might be aware of what happened this last weekend on Sunday on I-5 in that area definitely affected our city and traffic and ability to move anywhere in the city, it felt like. So very supportive of the letter. Thank you for bringing this up.
No problem, Council President Ackerval. I appreciate the support.
Anyone else? Questions, comments, suggestions? I can't believe Frank's quiet on this point. I will weigh in again on my general comment about this. I cannot believe we don't have people with pitchforks and torches at our meetings when we haven't got the Boone Bridge done. I went through there the other day, and as somebody that regularly drives the back way to get to Woodburn and down to my in-laws down in Independence, I threw away 23 minutes of my life waiting in what is everyday traffic backed up because of Boone Bridge. There wasn't an accident. There wasn't a police action. There was none of this excitement going on the highway. It was just regular Thursday traffic. And that we don't have people just yelling at us every day about this. I can't believe it, to give up that much time of your life on the Boone Bridge.
And go ahead and toll it. If that, we're doing tolling on 205, do tolling on I-5. I mean, if we're doing tolling, make it equitable. And, I hear people crying about, and I'm out of speaking out of turn, but build it, please.
Yeah. Councilor Rippey?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I have absolutely no objections to this, so I'm in support of expanding Boone. I think anything we do to help with regard to making sure our freight gets up and down the corridor and as quickly as possible. All of our areas are dependent upon economic development, and even as far away from I-5 as Forest Grove is, it's still an impact to us. And so we're definitely in support. Thank you.
Thanks. Terry?
Yeah, and I just want to say that I think former Mayor Tim Knapp would probably be terribly disappointed in all of us if we did not show some support for this project. He's been a big champion for the project and, trying to reduce just the congestion, make it more safe, and so on and so forth. So hopefully, Council President Ackerval, you can, channel that to him if you happen to run into him. That would be lovely. Thank you.
Anyone else? Questions, comments?
I appreciate everybody's support today and your comments. Thank you.
Beach, I think we got barring anything, I've heard nothing but accolades. Frank gave us the thumbs up. So I think let's get that letter going and get it through the mill.
We will do that. Thank you.
And
Steven?
I would just ask, just a procedural question. It sounds like someone's drafting a letter that can be circulated amongst the committee members. So when we have a draft that's ready to be put on letterhead, let us know. We'll put it on WCCC letterhead and bring it back to you all for a recommendation on signatures. And we can probably just do that by email, I would suspect. Sounds like we have pretty broad support for signing the letter.
Yes, sir. We'll send that over.
Excellent. Thank
you. Garrett.
I suppose I have to add a comment here because I've gone on record as supporting the Boone Bridge project, realizing, of course, that it means Metro is going to have to pay a lot more attention, and we're going to have more conversations with Yamhill County and concerned about the potential impacts on land use going forward in the long term. So this is some larger issue. And just as a more humorous aside, I have tried diversion over the Canby Ferry, and it really doesn't work very well.
Right. If the mayor of Canby was here, he would absolutely tell us all, thank you very much for all we've done to constrain Portland, because it's really helped his population grow, as people have decided it's better to live in Canby and work in Portland than live within the circle. Okay. We have some other topics here. We've got a few minutes. I don't want us to run us right up to the end. But Chris, I think, one of the things we've talked about is, do we need to have some more discussion or input on climate-friendly, equitable community rules?
Yeah, that's a great question. That is coming to, let's think about this. I think it's the end of March, yep. March 31st, April 1st, it goes to the Land Conservation Development Commission. There's a version out right now that from the Secretary of State's offices. It's only 136 pages. So when you finish your Jpac packet, you can go to that one. Our board did submit a letter with highlighting about 7 or 8 areas of concern that we feel like need to be addressed. I know other cities have identified concerns. There won't be, and I think, so I guess I think it's just something at this point to highlight, if your city isn't paying attention to it, now's the time. And we might be able to pull together of those, we could share letters that are coming out. I think Beaverton submitted a letter.
It's on their council agenda for discussion.
Oh, it's on for discussion. So we could share comments. It's definitely a big deal.
And if folks are interested, the county's letter will be in the Board of Commissioners agenda packet from March 8th as well. They reviewed the letter there. We made a couple of minor adjustments to it from the version that was in the packet, but that substantially hits the concerns that the county has. And a lot of it has to do with just the aggressiveness of the timing of developing the rules. Hasn't really given us a lot of opportunity to really understand the rules very well and the implications of them. We think it would be prudent to do some market analysis to try to identify whether the rules will actually help support development. We would hope so. I think we have concerns about funding for implementation. We're still scrambling to get our middle housing rules adopted. I'm sure all of us are. And then there would be this additional set of rules that we'll need some time to be able to implement through our plan and code amendment process. And there hasn't to date been a specific source of any supplemental funding identified to help local jurisdictions do that. So just a variety of concerns. We all support, I think, the goals of the process and want to get behind that. Just looking for some consideration in terms of the practicalities of how it gets implemented.
And I think that's a good way to put it, Stephen. We're all looking to that same, right? We want to build up where we can. We want to do the right thing to support a climate-friendly environment, to make it walkable communities. But we also, I think, a lot of our arguments from our city particularly have been against basically the elimination of home rule and self-determination of what proper development is in your community. And that was the part that we took, complete against, basically, that that we have zero control over what parking would be in our community, when we probably have the best idea what parking needs to be like in our community versus what it might be in Portland, versus what it might be in Troutdale, versus what it might be in Milwaukee or Wilsonville. you know, to take away that home rule thing. I think that's the hardest thing we struggled against. Frank?
I just echo your concerns, and the assumption that they have that there's adequate transit options throughout the region is ridiculous. That I'm not gonna, you know, I pick on TriMet a lot, but I mean the lack of options here in Tualatin, and I know my fellow mayor Sherwood has even less of, you know, alternative transportation options. It doesn't work. You can't tell me I can't do major improvements to my transportation planning and have parking requirements when you can't give me a decent bus service that runs, you know, 7 days a week, you know, 24 hours. So it just doesn't work.
Right. We had that discussion too, and I finally got him to throw some numbers out. And basically, Cornelius, we even with bus rapid transit as our primary, a rapid, right, every 15-minute service in our community, we can get maybe 50 people an hour out of Cornelius if Tim hasn't already loaded the bus completely full in Forest Grove before it gets to me, right? So by the time it gets to the Beaches neighborhood, tough, you don't get anything, right? So that's, and when we're talking about only increasing our bus capacity, so if you take the Cornelius example of going from 50 people an hour to maybe 150 people an hour by tripling our bus service, well, what am I going to do? That doesn't do anything for 4,600 people trying to leave Cornelius every day to go to work. That doesn't even get you to the 10% number.
You build transit on the Council Creek corridor there, Jeff.
You mean a BRT? I would love to see BRT on the Council Creek. That'd be great. A dedicated throughway where you could actually get to the end of the max. Then if we could just figure out how to get the max to get into Portland in less than an hour, it'd be great. Bitter, table for one, bitter. So what else do we got on there? Chris, is there anything else? I killed Pace, apparently. She fell out of her chair.
I would just say that to be determined yet, as some of these will or may be administered by metros, there may be different regional. We may have, so there's still, I think we'll learn more about how the metro region fits in to implementing some of these rules. So yeah, it's a big deal. It is a big deal to watch. More, I think a couple of these you may know about. You mentioned the TV highway study that's going on, helping from the grant, helping obtain prosperity for everyone grant. The communities along TV highway are plugged into this one. There is a new steering committee that's been formed, that is being formed, that will be meeting on that one, as well as an equitable development community organization. And then the other one that's just now kicking off is ODOT's West Side Multimodal study, what we used to call the US 26 study. That is also starting up. So that's more that I think this group will want to pay attention to on both fronts. And then again, the regional transportation plan has got a lot of really important policy.
Well, and that's, I think that goes that ODOT West Side Multimodal really looking at how do we crack through this to what Frank's point was, right? I think about my buddy's neighborhood, right? He lives off 26 in Ainsworth, and he's within 4 or 5 blocks in any direction of 3 to 4 buses. Do you want to go north, south, east, west? What direction you want to go? There's a bus within blocks of his home, and that's why he can commute into downtown. He can literally ride a bus as fast as he could ride his bike into downtown. But when you get in our area, we've got the one bus, right? And even in Hillsborough, who's obviously, or Beaverton, which is our, high population areas, there just isn't that kind of service, right? We just don't have that complete grid. So Tara's gonna knock me off my chair now.
I'm not, I'm just providing you all an opportunity to weigh in. Right now, we are at TriMet doing a comprehensive service analysis of our existing bus service and have a survey out right now for folks to weigh in about where to reallocate service, and that is underway right now, looking at how we can continue to best serve riders across the region. So I'll put if there's a chat, I'll put it in there, but it's just trimet.org/forward. And I think my colleague Grant O'Connell has been making the rounds at many of the coordinating committees over the past month. So we welcome feedback officially through that, but also happy to continue the conversation on specific lines and looking at capacity and where to help. So
thanks, Sarah.
Chris, feel free to jump
Yeah,
in.
I'll just jump in to say that Grant O'Connell came to the TAC and shared this work plan for how they're looking at different services and the trends in ridership and all. And we thought that we wouldn't have time on today's agenda, but we have him scheduled to come and give you an update in your April agenda. And then by then we'll also be able to, you know, the next allocation of the statewide transportation improvement fund, the one that funds the Grove Link and the Tarleton Shuttle and the North Hillsborough Shuttle, that work is also kicking off. So we'll be able to come back to you in April or May as well with some of our proposals for the longer term, our wish list for longer term sort of shuttle or community connector services as well.
Cool. Anything else for the good of the order, or we could actually get out of here with 4 minutes to the transition so you could actually stretch your legs before your next Zoom meeting. Great. Nothing else. Sounds like it's good. We're adjourned.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. Have a good day.
Thanks, Stephen.